Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wise Guys. I'm here with Tony today. Kyle is on a hiatus, but he'll be with us again next week. Tony, how you doing on this lovely evening?
I'm doing good. And Kyle, we know you're there listening, and you're with us here in spirit. So you won't be missed.
Yep,
We'll
I would agree with that, but
talk to you next time.
I agree. I agree. So, Tony, it's been about a month since we've had a show due to a bunch of other factors that we don't want to get into right now. But the good news about that is there's a whole lot of ground for us to cover.
Yeah.
Where would you like to start?
I don't know where else to start other than the wide receiver market and how it's changed over the last 2-3 weeks with a couple of crazy trades and maybe one pretty reasonable trade that I like.
See, it almost reminds me of a presidential cycle. And I'm not taking any shots at any one person or any one party because every party does this. The president gets elected because he or she promises, I'm going to do this, this, and this, right?
Yeah.
Their base comes out. They come out in big numbers. They vote the new president in there. President gets in there. And maybe the president does one or two of the things that they promised. But then they do several things that nobody wanted, nobody asked for. It just makes everybody upset that they did, and it ruins everything. That's kind of what this wide receiver trade market and the value is doing to me. It's nobody asked you to pay that. No one asked you to issue this contract. That wasn't necessary. And I'm looking at this, and it almost reminds me of the year when they signed Kirk Cousins to that ridiculous deal of what was it, 28 per year, 30 million, 28 million, 30 million per year, every penny guaranteed for a middle of the road, maybe above average quarterback.
Yep.
And the rest of the league was saying, Minnesota, what are you doing? Number one, you guys are blithering idiots to make this move. But number two, now we have to pay the consequences. Now you up the market to a ridiculous extent where we have to give monster deals that don't make any sense, and it's just going to kill us in the future. And there's only 2 or 3 ways now to win a championship. You know, the golden blueprint was A, be the Patriots or anybody else. You have to build around a young quarterback while you're paying him nothing, get great talent. And now there seems to be a new method, which is break the bank every year on short-term deals. We saw both Tampa Bay and the Rams pull this off. But is that going to be the only way teams can win a championship? Because if you start giving out these ridiculous contracts, you're gonna mess up the whole team.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the presidential angle because a lot of these deals are for 4 years. So I found that interesting. But also, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so I think teams will look at it like, I think there's a lot of teams that are being extremely aggressive right now, probably because of what we're seeing, what we saw with the Rams and with the Bucs really last year too. Of going all in and signing a bunch of these guys and not really caring too much about what you push down the road. I mean, the Saints, for example, they're a team that over the last 5 years had really pushed the limit in terms of cap space. Drew Brees, on his last legs, that team really went all in to try and win a championship before Brees left, and they gave Brees every opportunity to do it. That's not today's conversation, but the Saints notoriously were like $50 million over the cap probably 60 days ago. And then, more and more stuff comes out about Watson. We'll talk about Watson in a second, but more and more stuff comes in about Watson, about maybe it's the Saints, maybe it's the Falcons. It's probably going to be the Saints or Falcons, and the Saints were the favorites at one point to land Watson, and all of a sudden they go from minus $50 million to, they've got $30 million in cap. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? And
How did that happen?
They kick the can down the road, and that's just what they do. And I think, a lot of these teams aren't really going to care too much about kicking the can down the road because a lot of these GMs are like, hey, I'm only going to last here for 4 or 5 years. I don't really care. Somebody else's mess. Who cares?
Pretty much.
And if we're successful, then I will be here. Then I'll deal with it. Fine. And so I think that's kind of the mindset of a lot of these teams. If you're a team like New England, obviously that's not the case. You don't have to be so aggressive. You're Bill Belichick. You don't have to, be worried about your job security. So you really don't have to go all in. Different team, even the Chiefs, for example, they really don't have to worry about it. So we'll get into some of the more specific teams and why it matters for each one of them. But I just think it's a really interesting trend that's kind of making itself known over the last couple weeks,
Well,
especially with the wide receivers.
Well, I think every couple of years you see one position be the dominant position in the market. With the Kirk Cousins and a bunch of the upcoming quarterbacks like Dak Prescott and a bunch of young people like that, quarterbacks really took over. And a lot of people said, oh, well, quarterback's the most important position. You have a lot of young quarterbacks. And yeah, that's true. I'm not going to refute that. But I think it also has a surplus of talent. I remember before that, the cornerback was the big deal. You had Sherman in his prime. You had Ramsey emerging. You had Darrelle Revis, while he may have been in the twilight of his career, he switched teams, won a Super Bowl, and got a mega contract. And you saw that position really get a lot more attention, and in doing so, get a lot more money. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a few of those, and now it's the wide receiver's turn.
Yep.
I think that's where it is, but there's a certain level of the reason the Patriots and teams like the Patriots have been successful is they're good at finding those middle of the tier free agents where you're a solid player, but I don't have to break the bank to bring you in.
Yeah.
And
finding value.
Exactly. And I think that's a trade we'll get into.
Yeah.
But so many of these, almost all of these wide receivers that we saw traded and then given the mega deal, you're killing your team. I mean, it's the same thing we saw for the Bears. A few years ago, they gave up the farm to get Khalil Mack. And the problem is once you give up the farm to acquire a player of any position, the player has all the leverage, and the player can demand whatever he wants. We saw both Khalil Mack do this to the Bears, and we saw Laramie Tunsil do this to the Texans. They gave up a ridiculous amount to get him. They give him a stupid deal that doesn't make any sense. And then the team is screwed for the next 5 years. Now we just see that wide receivers are emerging into that class of the position that's going to break a team.
Yeah, and I think I disagree with a lot of what you're saying.
I disagree with a lot of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I will say, to your point, before I begin my rebuttal,
okay.
I'll say there's one thing I agree with you on. As far as wide receivers go, they kind of grow on trees now. I think they kind of grow on trees. I mean, you look at what's happened with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. A lot of these guys, these young guys, they're doing way more advanced stuff in college than they ever used to.
That's true.
And wide receivers are at an all-time high right now as far as young wide receivers go. And you can probably get a really good wide receiver pretty late in the draft. Like I think of even Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, think about that guy. He was drafted in the 5th round by the Detroit Lions. He's their number one receiver. Yeah, they don't have a great receiver core, but he's a middle-of-the-road player that they just got in the 5th round, and he's a starter. And what are they paying for him this year? Probably less than $1.5 million.
Change. I mean, I'll give you a better example. The Super Bowl champion Rams and Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
That was an outstanding pick, and in getting rid of that, you didn't have to ridiculously overpay for Brandon Cooks, or I know they were stupid enough to give him that contract, but then they realized, wait, we don't actually have to pay this. This isn't necessary. We can have another stupid team like the Texans pay this. Well, we just take the cheap person.
Yeah.
Or even the Minnesota Vikings. No, we don't have to ridiculously overpay for Diggs. We can get another great receiver who costs nothing.
Yeah,
in Jefferson.
And I think that's what you're seeing the smart teams do here. I mean, you think about the Chiefs and the Packers. Those are the top, 2 of the top 10 or 15 top smart teams in the league, right? No matter how you look at it.
I would agree with that.
I mean, they're 2 smart teams that are in win-now positions that just traded away a couple of guys who some might argue were their 2 best players.
Right.
And so, they might be looking at this like, hey, we're going to get an extra first-round pick and an extra second-round pick in both cases, actually, to say we're going to, try and bulk up our draft class and see if we can't hit on one of these receivers later in the draft and get some success there, because your quarterback's Patrick Mahomes, your quarterback's Aaron Rodgers, and you're paying them $50 million for a reason. I mean, these guys have to really elevate the team. So, it's to pay Mahomes 50 and to pay Rodgers 50 and then to turn around and pay Adams or Hill 30 on top of that. You're giving $80 million of your cap to a quarterback wide receiver duo. Doesn't really make sense. So to go with a quarterback who's really expensive for a really good reason, you figure that quarterback's got to really elevate your team in order to make it worth it. And so on the other side of it, I think Miami and Las Vegas are 2 teams that need to help their quarterbacks as much as they can while they're cheap. So I kind of look at it like that to say Hill and Adams, it feels like the Chiefs and the Packers really got some good value out of a couple of guys that in a couple of years may not be all that great.
No, and I give the Chiefs and the Packers a lot of credit. You're in a tough position. You put yourself between a rock and a hard place, and I'm not criticizing them for that. That's just sometimes it's the way the cookie crumbles, and that's what they had to do, especially when, as you pointed out, you got Rodgers, you got Mahomes. You weren't going to be able to pay everybody. And the bigger thing I'm looking at, especially with Miami, I understand supporting Tua. I really do, and that makes sense. I mean, I would get a quarterback, but Miami doesn't want to do that. So, okay, they're going to stick with Tua. The answer in my mind with Tua is get a number of solid veterans that can get the job done. You don't necessarily need to have the best receiver in the league. Take Tyreek Hill, for example. The best receivers in the league can only be useful, can only have their talent showcased when you put them with an exceptional quarterback. It doesn't matter if you give me Randy Moss and you give me Jerry Rice. You gave me great receivers. That's great. I'm not Aaron Rodgers. I'm not Patrick Mahomes. That's not going to do anything. So I think the idea to ridiculously overpay for a speedster, when you have a speedster, the point is you can hit the deep ball and hit it accurately. For all that I've criticized Ben Roethlisberger over the years on the show, as I will continue to do so, the thing he was able to do...
You're going to continue to do so throughout his retirement?
Yes. But the thing he was
I hope he doesn't come to TV. Because then I'll continue to do so.
But the thing he was able to do consistently in his prime, especially during the latter years when he had Antonio Brown, he was excellent with the deep ball. That is what you need. If you're going to have the great receiver of Antonio Brown or whoever it may be, you need a quarterback that can hit the ball. Tua can't do it. So to ridiculously overpay, not only in compensation but also in cash, for Tyreek Hill, for a quarterback that can't even use him, it doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like a complete waste.
Well, I think, and let's get into the Hill thing. So, first of all, Miami gives up number 29 overall and number 50 overall in this year's draft, a 4th-round pick in this year's draft, and then a 4th and a 6th-round pick next year. Then they give Tyreek Hill a 4-year, $120 million deal with $73 million in guarantees. Tyreek's 28 years old, just turned 28. So he's been in the league a few years. We know what he can do. I think back to the Alex Smith days with this one, as far as Miami's use of Tyreek Hill. And then I think about Deebo Samuel and what they did in San Francisco, because that's what Mike McDaniel came from.
Right.
And I think Mike McDaniel, well, here's the thing. For the Miami job to be occupied, it needed to be occupied by a coach who believes in Tua.
Yeah.
Because the owner wanted Tua, Flores didn't want him. You know, there was a split up. We've been over this. We don't have to rehash.
No, we've talked about that. There was a split. Smart people were kicked out of the building.
Yeah, I agree. And so Tua's in his 3rd year now, and he really hasn't lived up to the hype. There's a lot of people on the other side that say this stuff is not fair to Tua and blah, blah, blah. I kind of disagree. I think Tua would have shown flashes by now in most scenarios. A quarterback going into year 3, it's very, very unlikely that they'll all of a sudden improve enough to be your long-term starter. So can Tua be like a top 20 quarterback in the league someday? Yeah, sure, maybe. But is he going to be a top 10? Probably not. Probably never. So the bottom line is, you know, what's Miami willing to do here? So I think what they're trying to do, and there's 2 different schools of thought here. The first one is Miami's trying to evaluate Tua. And the second one, by surrounding him with Tyreek Hill, they signed Teron Armstead. They signed Connor Williams from Dallas.
Yep.
So 2 offensive linemen that they think they can really beef up the offensive line. They signed Tyreek Hill, obviously, to that 4-year extension after the trade. And they franchise tagged Gesicki. So they're really trying to build around Tua to give Tua the greatest chance that he possibly can. Now, the second school of thought is Mike McDaniel maybe doesn't really believe in Tua, and this is for life after Tua. And maybe this is one of those scenarios, because the other thing you got to remember, they signed Teddy Bridgewater. This is an important, critical piece of this, I think, because I think Miami's sort of hedging their bet. I think they're saying, both of these 2 schools of thought can be true. I think the first one is, let's evaluate Tua, let's make sure that there's nothing left out of him that we can't get out of him, because the last regime wasn't really all that great offensively. Even though we love Flores, wasn't really the best offensive system.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So that's part A. Part B is, hey, if Tua sucks, we got Bridgewater. We'll throw him in the middle of the season, and then we'll draft somebody. Or we'll sign a free agent, or we'll be in a position to trade for somebody, whoever becomes available. Maybe it's Murray. Maybe it's Rodgers again. Who knows?
Anything's possible, yeah.
And so Miami, they probably put themselves in a pretty good position to be able to get somebody else next year in the event the Tua thing doesn't work out. So maybe McDaniel's looking for every excuse to prove to the owner that Tua's not the guy. Or if it works out, then hey, it works out. That's kind of how I look at it, because, and that's why I think it's a good trade for Miami, because they have a lot of picks. They also have 2 picks next year, 2 first-round picks next year.
That's
so
true.
You can't forget about that. They're in a position to trade up if they want to. So it's not like this deal really broke the bank for them in terms of draft assets. Compensation-wise, $73 million guaranteed. That's a lot for a guy who's 28 and he's going to be 29 next year. So who knows? But with that part, I kind of like the gamble for Miami.
I was about to say, I like the idea of bringing in a speedster like Tyreek Hill. I don't like the amount that they paid for him. And I guess here's my biggest thing, right? Typically when you have a quarterback succession plan, especially like, if you've had a guy who's been there for a number of years, and I'm not saying Tom Brady 20 years, but you've got a guy who's been there for 3 to 4 years, the plan is pretty clear. I mean, even with Trubisky, everyone knew he was horrible. Everybody knew there was going to be a quarterback drafted. There was no secret about that. They were building their team all around getting a new quarterback. That's what this was. Miami's whole strategy isn't building around getting a new quarterback. Miami's is doubling down on this. It almost reminds me a little bit of Baltimore. Now, I'm not criticizing Baltimore, but if you look at them, they have a quarterback that they realize can't throw. They're fully aware of that, and they said, okay, our quarterback can't throw. Let's build an offense that's designed around having him run, having a heavy run game, and then making sure nobody covers the pass. Because at that point, if no one covers it, maybe Lamar can hit 2 or 3 passes a game. And that's how they're building their entire offense. Miami's doing the exact same thing for Tua. This is built to be a run-heavy offense where if you don't cover if you decide to only cover the run and you don't cover the pass, okay, now I got Tyreek Hill. That's what it looks like to me, which it says you're doubling down on Tua. And that logic makes no sense as far as I'm concerned. With your second train of thought, I could buy into it.
But I think Hill is such a versatile weapon that it could go either way. It could be Hill in the run game. It could be Hill on jet sweeps. It could be, they could run Hill on outside zone. They could do him like they did Deebo Samuel. Or they can also run Hill loose on the deep routes like you're saying. But I think Hill is such a versatile player. He's almost a perfect guy to say, hey, we can evaluate Tua, but also if it doesn't work out, we got options.
He's versatile, but also if you have nobody else, let's bring up the Alex Smith Chief days. Mm-hmm. At that point, Travis Kelce had a number of injuries early in his career. It took him a little while to come into the Travis Kelce we know today.
Yep.
That every year of the Alex Smith offense, first 5 weeks they were amazing, they were incredible, no one could stop them. And after 5 weeks, teams realized, oh wait, they only have one weapon. Just take away Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing you started to see near the end of this year's San Francisco team. That was a hard-nosed defensive team. And it was a team we all wanted to see win. You're happy for them. But they figured out, you take away Deebo, you probably win the game. That's what this is coming down to.
But it's Waddle on the other side.
And Waddle, I have respect for Waddle. I can't criticize him, but it seems like it's falling into that mold where you're building everything around one player that's not the quarterback. And if that one player it happens to be covered, you're going to see an intelligent team that realizes it's all about him. And we saw Miami do this before with Jarvis Landry back in the day. That entire team this is a Jarvis Landry game. No matter what, give him 20 touches a game. And there are teams that, okay, we'll leave everybody else open, but we're taking away Landry. So it seems like a plan that we've seen Miami try before, and it just hasn't worked. And Miami, we've talked about this before. That organization has a history of ineptitude, especially in the past couple decades, and this seems like a failure to change from that.
I gotta say, I want to see how it plays out. I'm not a fan of Tua, but I think this gives Tua the best chance And I think we're going to go into this season and say, Miami's pretty good, but Tua's holding them back. And I think that's ultimately going to be the outcome for them this year, because I just can't see a world in which Tua rises his game to the point that it needs to be in order to compete with the rest of the teams in the AFC. I mean, you look around the AFC, it's real busy. There's a lot of really good quarterbacks. There's a lot of really good coaches.
Even the AFC East, I look at them as the third best team.
Yeah.
And I look at it, again, if you put another quarterback in Miami, let me rephrase that. If you put a quarterback in Miami, I think they're the second best team in the division.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I think they're the third best.
It's going to depend on coaching, really, for me, because if Mike McDaniel can get that team to perform like San Francisco's offense was, I think it's going to be a game changer. Depends on how good he is year one. I mean, is he a better coach than Flores? I don't think so.
I mean, a good indicator for me is going to be the draft.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the draft, not every team is perfect. There are some teams that are much better coached than they are in terms of drafting. The Patriots are actually a good example of that. But a lot of times, the draft will give you a rough indication of whether the team is intelligent, and if they're intelligent, what their strategy is, or if they're just boneheaded stupid. Two great examples of teams where you could learn from right away. One I stand with is Baltimore. I may have criticized Baltimore before. I will criticize them more. That being said, if you look at the history of their drafts, they're very intelligent when it comes to figuring out what players to bring in, what they need, how to evaluate them, and how to get the best out of them. Another team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those guys are very smart. But when I look at the draft, a team where I don't need to see how you play on the field, I know you're going to be horrible, is the Giants. I mean, I'm serious. Yeah. The past 5 years, can you name one intelligent draft pick that they've made?
Well, Gettleman's out the door. You've got the new Bills brass in there, Joe Schoen and
we'll see how it
Dave
comes out.
We'll see.
But I'm saying under the past 5 years, 6 years, we didn't need to see them step on the field. We knew just on watching the draft that the Giants were going to be a disaster.
Agreed.
And I think Miami will have those similar tells, where I'll be able to look at them and going, okay, you guys have a chance. Okay, you guys are interesting. Or I'll be able to go, all right, we don't need to waste our time.
Yeah.
Move on. They're done.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, especially since they do have multiple picks that they'll be playing around with.
Yeah.
I think it'll make things a lot more interesting.
What do you think of the Chiefs side of this real quick? Because they trade away Hill. He's 28 years old. They figure, we probably got the most out of him. He might be good for 1 or 2 more years, but if we gave him that $4 million deal, the 4-year deal for $120 million, it may really have not lived up to its full potential, and we can't have any bad contracts on this team. We're building around this really tough contract with Mahomes. We have to make sure there's no bad money anywhere. And so, giving Tyreek that deal probably would have been maybe a mistake. It could have. There's maybe a chance. There's a world where the Chiefs are sitting there in 2 years and they're like, oh crap, it was really bad. And I think it's a good move for the Chiefs too.
No, it's hard for me because as someone who I don't like the Chiefs.
Yeah.
That being said, it's a brilliant move.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. You have 3 focal pieces of your offense. It's Travis Kelce, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Tyreek Hill. Not in that order for obvious reasons. But here's the thing. What makes Tyreek Hill so special? What makes him so special is his speed. When you are playing in the NFL, the first thing to go is speed. You will lose that at some point. Strength and muscle, you can build that back instantly. Knowledge of the game, you can keep that for a long time. That's not going anywhere. Speed is going to leave at some point, no matter what you do. So because
I don't know though. I mean, I'd be interested to do some real research on that because I hear people say that all the time. And what about Deshaun Jackson? I mean, there have been other examples.
Well, here's the thing with Deshaun Jackson. Okay, he'll pop up for 2 or 3 games a season. He'll have one big, deep touchdown.
That's kind of how he's always been, though. He's really a spotty player.
No, early in his career, he was very good. He consistently he was a deep ball master. You'd see him go off every other week. Now he goes off maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks a season, and then he's done.
But he can still fly. I mean, his peak is as high as it's always been.
But here's the difference. Tyreek Hill can run, he can run like a lightning bolt all day long.
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson, he's got 1, maybe 2 good deep routes in him a day. And after that, he's done.
It depends on the quarterback, too, though. He's played with a lot of different quarterbacks.
He has, but that doesn't mean anything in terms of you can run quickly once or twice and then you're gassed, you're done for the day. Tyreek Hill's not at that point. he's going to lose that. Maybe if you want to say it's more stamina than speed, okay, fine, I'll give you that. But nevertheless, it's still a factor that weighs out quickly.
Yeah.
So of the three, Tyreek Hill is the one who's going to expire the fastest, soon to speak, or so to speak, excuse me. And as you pointed out earlier, wide receivers are growing like trees right now.
Yep.
So he's also the easiest to replace.
Agreed. Yeah,
So-
and tight ends are extremely hard to replace.
They
So-
are.
And obviously quarterbacks. So
I mean, when
I think it's smart.
Mike Gesicki is getting franchise tagged,
Yeah.
that tells me all I need to know
Yeah.
about the tight end market. So
I agree.
they made the right decision.
David Njoku got franchise tag.
My point exactly. So they did the right decision. They
Yeah.
had to keep Kelsey. You got to keep Mahomes.
Yep.
And I think it's a smart move. You get all the draft picks. You have a chance to do some rebuilding, and even a receiver like a Juju Smith-Schuster.
I agree.
Okay, maybe he's not Tyreek Hill, but he's still serviceable.
He is. And Mahomes will elevate the team, and that's the idea. Is they sign Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they sign Juju Smith-Schuster, and they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The idea is to get hyphenated names into the building. No, but Juju, I mean, they signed Juju and Marquez. These guys are run blockers.
Yeah.
This team is going to be a run-heavy team. I think that the Chiefs are trying to change their strategy, and Mahomes is going to elevate the passing game because he's Mahomes. But they want to build around the run because the Chiefs in the last couple of years have really stunk it up when it comes to the running the ball. And you could argue they lost last year because they really couldn't run it. And they've got running backs, they've got Clyde, and they've got Jerick McKinnon or whatever. But they haven't had the blockers that are required. You move Hill, you get some compensation back, and yes, that hurts your passing game. But you're able to sign Marquez and Juju, two guys who aren't necessarily walking in thinking, I'm the number one guy. And then you can pick someone in the draft, and that guy's not necessarily going, I'm the number one guy either. You lose DeMarcus Robinson, they really reshuffled their entire wide receiving core.
And they had no choice. They
I
knew
agree.
it was coming.
Yeah, and then they've still got Hardman. He's a deep threat. So, you've got guys who you can toss out there. You're going to get somebody in the draft. You've still got Kelsey. He's probably your top receiver. And so, you're picking these guys so you can bolster your run game, and Mahomes is always going to be there to benefit your pass game. So I think we're going to walk into a new iteration of this Chiefs team where teams are going to say, hey, we're going to play cover two, and Chiefs are going to be like, okay, I'll take the first down, just like we saw the Patriots do back in the day.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really their strategy. And you think about the Patriots and how this matters, how this relates to it, I should say, is, the Patriots would say, hey, this so-and-so needs a new contract, Chandler Jones, whoever it is, we'll ship him out, we'll get some compensation back, and we'll reshuffle some things around, and we're just a new defense. And we're just a new iteration of this defense, a new iteration of this offense, whatever it was.
Yep.
And so the Chiefs have to elongate that as much as they can. They've got Mahomes, he's 26. He's a young guy. They got to build around him for a long time.
Yep.
They have to change who they are every so often, and this is just the first example of that.
Yep.
So-
No, it's a good move. I'm happy for the Chiefs because I think they will be an exciting team to watch, and I think that's the other piece of it is think about that. I mean, offensively, the Tampa Bay system and the New England system under Brady, it's the exact same system. Call it different, put a different color to it, but it's the exact same thing. That exact same offense cost them 2 rings. And so you have to realize they're looking at this going, we could have had 3 championships. We got 1 because of that same offense that's been killing us. Let's try and take from that. Let's use that offense and see what we can get with it. Because we saw for the past 2 years now, the Chiefs' stubborn, go deep, no matter what offense has really hurt them. I point to the Super Bowl, but even last year, the first half of the season was them being stuck on that ridiculous go deep or nothing offense. Sooner or later, they changed from that, and it helped them out for a while, but it wasn't sustainable. And I think it cost them in the AFC Championship game. I think going run heavy, it reminds you of the Patriots even more with the 2018 championship against the Rams, ironically enough, where they knocked out the Chiefs. That was a run team.
Yep.
That was a Sony Michel, every other play, James White, go at it type of offense. And then, okay, if you're going to block the run, I got Tom Brady, Julian Edelman, and
Exactly.
Gronk. That's what they're doing here. And it'll be fun to watch because it was fun to watch in New England.
And I think it'll bait some teams into playing some cover one against them again. And then all of a sudden it'll make them regret it because you got Patrick Mahomes and he's got a bazooka, and
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
No, and I look forward to it. What are some of the other receivers? So we talked about Tyreek Hill.
Yeah,
The other receiver, let's stay within the division.
Yeah.
I think we got to go Devontae Adams.
let's go. So he
And-
gets traded for, I'll just give you the terms and then I'll ask
Yep,
for your
give it to
opinion.
me.
So the Las Vegas gives up a 2022 first, a 2022 second. That's it. And then
Okay.
they give him a new deal, 5 years, 142 million, 66 guaranteed. He's 29 years old. That's one more year than Hill, and Devontae signed his deal, of course, before Hill.
Yep.
He's one more year than Hill, and he's also older than Hill. And of course, he got more money because it's longer. But he got less in guarantees. He got only 66 in guarantees. So those are the terms of the deal.
So here's the problem. Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of those guarantees are front-loaded guarantees in Devontae.
Probably. Yeah. Well, you got to remember, Derek Carr is making, I think, $20 million this year, which is remarkably cheap.
I was about to say that's actually a good price.
Yeah. And I think, it's good value for a guy like Derek Carr,
That's what I'm saying,
who's
yeah.
on his last year of his deal. And I don't know if they'll give him a new deal. Who knows? Maybe they'll just play the year out and see what happens. But as of right now, you've got him on a really good price. So putting some really good pieces around him is going to help.
Yep. I like the idea of signing Devontae Adams, giving up a first and a second. I don't like it, but I think that's fair, reasonable compensation that you were going to have to give up for Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
So that one, honestly, that one doesn't bother me as much. It bothers me a little bit from a management side of why are you giving him that much? Why are you giving him that much per year guaranteed? Yes, he was good. Yes, he is good. Yes, he's one of the better receivers in this league. But I look at him and question, are you the number one guy in the league, or are you a product of having Aaron Rodgers your entire career? Now, again,
No, I don't think he's a product of.
I
of
think
Rodgers.
I think he is to an extent. Again,
I think anyone is. That's an interesting question because, you talked about Tyreek, and I don't think that he's the same guy with Tua.
But here's the
by any
difference.
means.
We saw Tyreek Hill when he had Alex Smith. We saw him flash talent when
Yeah,
he didn't have.
but
the
he wasn't
superstar
as good with Smith that he was with Mahomes,
He wasn't,
and
but
he was
you
also younger.
He was younger, but you also saw, okay, we're going to put the entire offense on your back, and we know our quarterback can't do anything. We know our running backs can't do anything. You make it work.
Yeah.
And they had the confidence in him, number one. Number two, he had the talent to get it done, at least to some extent. We questioned their offense and often mocked it at times, but that offense made it to the playoffs.
Yep.
On several occasions.
Yeah.
I remember that same offense with Alex Smith, Tyreek Hill, the whole, all of it. They came into New England on their Super Bowl championship or the first game of the season after they just won the Super Bowl. Their big party. Everyone said, "Oh, they're going to be undefeated this year. They're wonderful." And then that same offense embarrassed New England on their home turf.
Yep.
So it can be a success. I have a lot more, I don't want to say I have a lot more respect, but in terms of the talent that those two receivers bring, I am more scared preparing for Tyreek Hill than I am preparing for Devontae Adams. Not saying Devontae Adams is a bad receiver, because he's not. But there's a level of, okay, give me a quarterback that's not Aaron Rodgers. You're a good quarterback. Let's see what you do.
I think he's still a top 10 receiver.
Yes, top
in
10.
the league.
I would give you that, but they paid for a top 2, at least.
Sure.
And I think
agree.
they overpaid for the compensation. At least I like the idea of, and you see this, the smart teams do this. You want to give them guaranteed money. Okay, I dislike it, but it is a part of the common market. You're going to have to give some guarantees. Don't front load it, because what's going to happen if you front load it, he's going to take all the guarantees, then he's going to demand a new deal. Don't do that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it gives you more flexibility if you need to kick things down the can. There's pros and cons to any of it, but
There's pros and cons, but the players have grown up. They're smart enough to realize if it's a backloaded deal, then you're just going to cut them right before and you're not going to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
So they figured that much out. But at the very least, you can balance it out. At least with Kelsey's deal, for example, there's multiple outs if they want outs from his deal. You could do something like that. Adams doesn't have that. They gave up the farm as far as compensation.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, sure, Derek Carr, you have a good deal. But either you better be ready to draft a quarterback next year, which I don't think they are.
maybe
or-
they are. Maybe they are.
They could be, but it doesn't look like it. Or get ready to overpay for Derek Carr.
Yeah. Well, they can't do that. Maybe they know they can't do that. But Derek Carr, he may be a hometown discount guy. Who knows? But I'm just saying, I think, you look at the Raiders offense. Adams kind of unlocks the rest of their players.
That's true.
You know, I mean, you look at Waller and Hunter Renfro. Those guys are going to be unlocked by Adams' ability to get outside and get deep, you know, whatever it is. So I think Adams is really going to unlock the rest of that team in the way that a quarterback typically would. And Carr is a guy that's competent enough to benefit from such a thing. So
The thing that I do like about Adams, he reminds me a little bit about Jerry Rice in the sense that Jerry Rice didn't specialize in one particular throw or one particular catch. It wasn't one route he had to do. Larry Fitzgerald's another example. He could do a little bit of everything. And I think that's the major positive you have with Davante Adams or someone of that mold. You know, I remember, how did their season end? Their season ended in Cincinnati because they had no choice but to throw to double-team Darren Waller in the middle of the field, right? And
Yep.
then when he was double-teamed, you had some little receiver, forget the guy's name, trying to go to the outside against a giant corner, and it didn't work. You know, if Darren Waller's your only option, you're stuck.
yeah,
If you have another big target who can run every route in the route tree, you have another option. You might beat the Bungles in their stadium.
yeah.
You might just move on. You know, and if you get past the Bengals, who do they even play in the second round? Tennessee? I think the Raiders could have beaten Tennessee.
Was it Tennessee or would they have played? I mean, I know the Bengals played Tennessee.
Yeah, because
but
they were a wild card team, so they would have faced the number one seed.
They would. Well,
They-
what was the other matchup?
It was New England, Buffalo, and then because
Yeah, but in the divisional round.
Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Buffalo.
Oh, okay. So it would have been Tennessee Raiders.
It would have been Tennessee Raiders.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a matchup that the Raiders would have won, especially seeing now how the Titans played.
Well, how the Titans played, yeah.
I think they would have won. You know, and then it's Raiders Chiefs for a third time, which it's weird because those two teams tend to split or at least have very close matchups
Yeah.
during the
Chiefs
regular
lost to
season.
the freaking Bengals after all. So,
I was gonna say, these things happen.
I mean,
They all. I mean,
the
this,
32nd best team in the league just made the Super Bowl. So all my football takes are, as far as I know, I know nothing.
It was a weird season. I
Yeah.
think we're gonna get another weird season coming up. But the Davante Adams one, I have concerns with it.
Yeah.
But not as many concerns as the Tyreek Hill trade. I think the other piece, you know, in that division, you're in Miami. Okay, you're not beating Buffalo. No matter what you do, you know you can't beat Buffalo. You only have to really beat New England, and if you can beat New England, you got a shot at the playoffs. I'm not saying you get in necessarily, but you got a chance. In the AFC West, you better be going all out because that it's a death row.
It's horrible. Yeah. It's horrible.
I can't wait to watch it. I really can't. But when you might be the worst team in the division. I think it's no question you have the worst quarterback in the division. If you're the reason, Derek Carr's not all that bad. He is a underrated quarterback in my mind.
Yeah, at this point he is. Absolutely. We're going to get plenty of Tony Romo this year. It's
that
going
is
to be
true.
awesome. It's going to be awesome.
So I think that they had no choice. You had
Yeah.
to go out with this move. And I look forward to seeing how it works out. But I definitely think Davante Adams will have some growing pains.
Yeah. Well, let's get a minute on Devontae Parker because you mentioned the Dolphins beating the Patriots. The Dolphins trade Devontae Parker to the Patriots. If I'm the Dolphins, I don't know that I'd do that. But they
I
trade him
wouldn't.
along with a 5th-round pick to obtain a 3rd-round pick, which is kind of a lot for a guy like Devontae Parker. But ultimately, it's a division rival, so you pay the price. I didn't love the trade for Miami. I love it for New England because I think you're getting a guy that is probably, you know, like we said, on the value scale, he's pretty high value in terms of who he is, what he does. I know he gets injured a lot, but I don't think the Patriots have really ever cared about something like that. You know, they had Gronk for years, and everybody who says availability is the best ability, they're just wrong. So Devontae Parker, welcome to
I
New
agree.
England. I think it's a good trade.
I love the trade for New England. I mean, the biggest issue we've seen with the Patriots for years is N'Keal Harry. I mean, the lack of ability to have a dependable receiver on the field that can catch and run routes and be intelligent. I think, unlike N'Keal Harry, Devontae Parker has everything there. When I think of Devontae Parker, I think of Week 17 in the 2019 season. The season where Stephon Gilmore was easily Defensive Player of the Year, one of the most dominant seasons for a cornerback in recent memory. No one could beat him except Devontae Parker. In Week 17, he was torching Stephon Gilmore all day long. And single-handedly, he pretty much knocked the Patriots out of that bye week slot.
Yep.
And as a result, we had to face Derrick Henry. So when Devontae Parker is on, he's on. And he can play very well. He's a great route runner. And when you throw passes in his hands, as I said, unlike certain first-round picks of the Patriots, he can actually catch.
Yeah.
So I think it'll work out well. And Mac Jones needs that. I mean, his first year, who is he throwing to? Arguably the best person you could throw to was Jacoby Myers or Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah. Well, Kendrick Bourne.
Kendrick Bourne. Okay, good. You've heard
Aguilar's out. Yeah. Aguilar's got to be out, right?
I really hope so.
I'm hoping.
But I mean, again, I'll take Aguilar over Harry, but that's not saying a whole lot.
Well, Harry's way gone at this point.
Just send him to the Texans.
Yeah. Out.
Yeah, so that or the Jets, one of those two, and nothing else.
I think, this is a fascinating move because I don't think the Patriots really need to get another receiver.
I mean, they will.
I think they put themselves in a position that if a receiver they like doesn't fall to them in the draft, they probably won't care because this is just what they do. They bolster their team. They say, hey, here's what's going to happen in the draft. Here's what we're thinking in the draft. If we can't get a guy at this or that position, it's not going to kill us. So I think the Patriots are going into the draft probably thinking wide receiver is not their biggest need. But if they got one, I'd be psyched. I just don't know that it's a guarantee at this point. I mean, you've got Parker, who's probably now your number one.
Yeah, I would say
when he plays. And then you've got Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers. I mean, that's three receivers right there. You can only play three at once, obviously.
Yeah, but
and then
it's
your
three
backup
people who can get the job done.
Yeah.
I like all of them. Particularly, I think Myers is underused, and I think he's underrated. I really like what he can when he's there. I think he almost reminds me of Edelman a little bit.
Yeah.
Where you can do a little bit of everything. I'm kind of impressed. I want to see more.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do see more, it's wow, he could do that too.
Yeah.
This is pretty good.
What about who's that guy who was in like real late in the season? I forget his name. It's not Zacchaeus, is it? Zacchaeus?
No.
That's a Falcons guy.
But
there was somebody. Remember, he got 2 touchdowns, like against the Jets or something in Week 17 or Week 16. You don't remember?
Wilkerson.
Wilkerson, yeah.
Oh, it was against the Jaguars.
Yeah. So, so you got Wilkerson. I mean, he's good depth.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Hang on to him.
I mean, to be fair, that's also the Jaguars.
But don't forget, you've also got Jonnu Smith. You've got.
I like Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry, who is, and I know Jonnu's been slightly disappointing, but he was injured last year. You can still line him up out wide. You can still run the ball with him.
Yeah,
he's fullback.
He can still get something done.
Hunter Henry's a good red zone target. I don't think the Patriots need a wide receiver after this trade. I think they could get one as a luxury, but we'll see what happens.
I still think you take at least one in the draft, maybe with a 3rd round pick, somewhere in that vicinity, somewhere between 2nd and 4th round. Mm-hmm. I really don't want to see the wide receiver after the 3rd round, but also Belichick has a terrible history of 1st-round receivers.
Yeah.
Harry's the most infamous example, but if you want to go further back, they're not pretty.
Yep.
You want to get into Aaron Dobson as a 2nd-round receiver.
I don't want to get into that.
You want to get into Chad Jackson. That was ugly. it wasn't pretty.
Yeah. No, I don't want that.
So let it be known. But I like what I'm seeing, and I think Mac Jones wants a true veteran who's been around the league for his development.
Yeah.
Cam Newton, for all of his faults, was very good to Mac Jones and treated Mac well and kind of helped him mature into that quarterback role. So I think getting somebody else who's been around a little bit, been to another team or two, it's not such a bad thing.
Yep. Do you want to transition to the one known as the former Mac Jones?
The former Mac Jones.
Who is Mr. Thomas Brady.
Yeah. Now
so,
let's get into that.
The last time we talked, Brady had not unretired yet. Okay, so Tom Brady, those of you that haven't heard, Tom Brady's unretired. He's coming back to the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, let's just start with that part of it because we know the Arians part. And we can tie them all together in a second.
Oh, we will.
But Brady coming back to the Bucks, what was that?
Well, I'll tell you what that was. So near the end of the season, Brady was absolutely disgusted with Bruce Arians. Because what it comes down to is this, and you outlined it very good in a previous show. Brady and Belichick didn't get along. They really didn't. And I think the problem is opposites attract, and they were just too similar. Both of them are relentlessly hardworking. All they care about is details. Everything has to be perfect. And I think having to deal with another person like that, it wore on them after 20 years, and Brady had enough. So he said, you know what? I got to have something different. I can't have this. I got to have someone who's a little more loose.
Yeah.
So he goes to Tampa Bay, goes to Bruce Arians, and goes, all right, this guy's a little more loose than Bill Belichick. That sounds good. But then he was too loose. And, you pointed out, he'd come in for Wednesday practice, come in Thursdays. All right, I was here for my 3 hours this week. I can leave now. And that caused a lot of problems. And it really irritated Brady because Brady was saying, I care this much. I'm in all the time. I'm working with everybody. I know you tore your Achilles, so you're going to sit on the golf cart and point at me practice, and then you're going to go home after 3 hours. I mean, it became frustrating. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, it's, okay, Arians, you're annoying, but that's fine. Go sit in a corner. Coach Leftwich and I will do everything.
Yeah.
And so they'd make these game plans and orient everything, and then Arians would come in and cross everything out and decide, no, we're doing this, we're doing this. And the whole concept of Arians, no risk it, no biscuit offense, it's great in theory. And Brady loves airing the ball out more than once every 2 games like he did in New England. That being said, he doesn't want to air it 50 times a game either, which is what Arians wanted. And Brady's saying, no, we can't do that.
And they ran the New England system for the most part.
I mean, what they did was, you saw it last year. It was Arians' system for the first half of the year until the bye week when they lost to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then Brady said, here's the deal. You're going to go sit in a corner. You're going to have a smile on your face and maybe put a mask on and a baseball cap. And then I'm going to run the offense. We're going to win a Super Bowl. You're not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. And Arians said, okay, that sounds good. They won a Super Bowl. And then to start off the year, they were doing the Brady offense. But then they were phasing more and more with Arians crossing stuff out and putting his offense in there. And Brady, I think, not to take a page from Michael Jordan, but he took that personally. There's a level of, I set this up. I made this work. I set up this offense. Who are you to come in with you and your humble leg and your humble Achilles and mess up everything?
Yeah.
And it became really tiring after a while, especially all we saw in the playoff game against the Rams, the first half, that was an Arians offense. Throws that didn't need to be throws. Short throws that were forced to be deep throws. It was all Arians. So Brady goes, look, I'm done. And we heard a number of reports, credible reports, that basically said Brady was done in Tampa. He had it with Arians. And Sean Payton was done in New Orleans. So the two of them happen to be friends. They've both been in the league for 100 years. So they called each other, hey, you know what? We can make it work in Miami. Let's go to Miami. It's still a hot weather Florida state. We'll go there. We'll have a great team. Now, unfortunately for them, Brian Flores had other ideas. So in doing that, it kind of blew up their plans. Brady didn't want to play for the Buccaneers, and the general management said, no, if you don't like Arians, that's a conversation we're willing to have, but I'm not giving you to another team.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So
Brady, and Arians was very public with that.
He was.
Arians was very not afraid to say, I mean, there were people asking him, and this is why it's really fishy, because Brady retired, and there were media people that were like, if Brady comes back, there's rumors he wants to go to Miami or the 49ers or something. Are you guys going to let him go back? And Arians was like, absolutely not. No. And it was like, whoa, dude. Nobody even thought this was a real possibility. We're just asking for fun. Yeah. And he was like, no, not happening. Absolutely never. No.
Bad for business.
Yeah. He was like, he was rude about it. And it was like, wow, that's way ruder than you needed to be, Bruce.
Exactly. And then after a while, Brady said, all right, I tried forcing my way out.
Yep.
That didn't work. So here's good. Remember how we said that if you don't like Bruce, Mr. Light or Mr. Buccaneers management, we'll have that conversation? Good. You win. I'll come back. Let's have that conversation. I'll come back, but one condition. You get the big bad man and you kick him out, and I get to pick who the coach is. And so they said, okay, sounds good. You come back, and then 1 week later, Bruce Arians will magically retire.
Yeah. Now, except it was more like 3 weeks. I mean, it was I don't know.
It was like a week.
It was like probably 2 weeks.
It wasn't all that long.
It was, I don't know. It felt a little, because they said the original report was that Brady knew that Arians was not coming back, which, probably in theory was the reason that Brady came back.
It's exactly what
and
it was.
And then, the Arians news is released like, I don't know, let's say like 10 days, but even that.
It was all PR. They couldn't do it on the same day. You had to have some sort of a gap.
Right.
And here's the thing. Who's the guy who gets the promotion? If it's Leftwich, okay, then everyone says, oh, it should have been Leftwich. Well, then he's not working as closely with Brady. Then Brady's got to deal with a new coordinator. Brady didn't want to deal with that. Brady and Bowles know each other. Bowles was the head coach of the Butt Fumble for about 5 years.
Yeah.
In being division rivals, they got to know each other and they got to respect each other over that period. And the thing about Todd Bowles, number one, yes, he knows his defense. Number two, he is an adult. He will hold people accountable. He will have people do their job, do it well. And almost more importantly, he's a defensive guy. This is what he was used to in Belichick without the scrutiny of Belichick is you run the defense, you do a great job in that, I will be king of the offense and you let me do everything. That's what this comes down to.
And Brady and Leftwich get to have their offense under Bowles. Bowles doesn't touch it. Bowles touches the defense, and he manages the team. And Arians leaving. I mean, what's the tangible effect of Arians being gone from that team?
I think it's all positive.
I think, well, yeah. I mean
mean,
it's either positive or it's just a total net zero, right?
I mean, it almost reminds me a little bit of, ironically enough, the only other Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach to win a Super Bowl, John Gruden. Sometimes taking that piece away is a good thing. All the Raiders, he had to leave for unceremonious reasons, to put it that way. But recently he had to leave his head coaching vacancy, and the players like, wow, it's a breath of fresh air. And I think there's a number of players, not just Brady, who are thinking, wow, it's a breath of fresh air. I mean, did you see Arians on the sidelines during games? It was just as much of a nut as Gruden was.
He looked like, he looked like he belonged in a hospital. It was insane the way that he
It was
looked.
an angry Elmo
Yeah,
every single time.
It was
It was bad.
ridiculous, yeah. I got to say, like, this whole thing just is so fascinating. And the fact that Brady I genuinely think he just wanted to go to the 49ers. And,
he did.
And I think that screwed up the 49ers because you look at Jimmy G and he's still on the team. And, I understand he's got injured and, he had surgery, so that screwed everything up. But, they probably, there was some source that said the Niners had some offer on the table for 2 first-round picks for Jimmy G. And if that was true, the Niners probably would have taken it had they known for sure that, there was a reason that they should take it, compelling reason that they should take it. But then, Jimmy with the surgery. So the timeline's a little confusing there. But I think if the Niners were obviously holding Jimmy because, maybe if Brady comes back, obviously we can't have Jimmy on the team.
Yeah.
But maybe Jimmy's a trade leverage piece to trade him to the Bucks.
Yeah.
In a potential trade of Brady. So you have to hang on to Jimmy because you don't know what's going on with Brady. But at the same time, is Lance really ready? We might want to have Jimmy on the team anyway.
Exactly.
We don't know. And so I don't know. I think that's kind of Brady screwed everything else up.
He did. It caused a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating, but I think Tampa will still be very good. I mean, I'm looking at the NFC right now. And yes, the draft can happen. Yes, more moves can still occur. I think it's a race of 2 teams. Unless San Francisco's quarterback situation improves much more than I expect it to.
Yeah.
It's a race between Tampa Bay and the Rams.
So let's go through it. Who was the 1 seed? It was Green Bay.
It was
right?
Green Bay, who couldn't score. They scored, 10 points?
I think they scored 10 points in the game.
They scored 10 points. That's good.
Against San Francisco.
The back-to-back league MVP put up a grand total of 10 points against a wildcard team.
And then they lost their best player, or their second best player.
That's right. And then I'm not going to say you overpaid Aaron Rodgers, but once again, we give a giant contract to Aaron Rodgers and give him even more guaranteed money than he had before. But at least he has money to get immunized.
It's expensive. It's an expensive process.
It's a very expensive process for Aaron Rodgers. But no, I think the Packers
are worse off.
The Packers are definitely going to be worse.
Yeah.
The Bears are permanently a disaster.
Who even mentioned the Bears? What do we need?
I was just going through divisions one by one of who has legitimate.
Well, what about? I mean, let's just start with the good teams last year, right?
All right.
Green Bay, the Rams. I think the Rams are still in it.
Rams
right?
are just as good as they were before, unfortunately.
Agreed. Okay.
The 49ers are better if they get a quarterback. Assuming they don't get a quarterback, well, you didn't have one last year, so you're the exact same thing to me.
Well, yeah, I'm confused about what happens in San Fran. I think it's genuinely a possibility that Jimmy stays, but it's probably going to be for less money if he does.
Yeah.
If they can't trade him, I feel like the 49ers probably don't want to send him to Seattle.
No,
but I feel like Seattle's probably the only team that wants him.
They won't send him to a division rival.
Yeah.
That division it's not the AFC West, but it's pretty close. They're not giving
But
anything
Seattle's
to the
bad.
division.
I mean, who's Seattle got? Drew Luck?
They got Shelby Harris.
I mean, Seattle's not going to be good. And Arizona's kind of a racket.
They're
right
a
now.
mess.
They're a
but
mess
They're a mess, but they can be very good when they need to be and when they want to be.
when they want to be.
When they want,
Not when they need to be.
That's true. Not when they need to be, but when they want to be, especially early in the season.
Yeah.
They can be very good, and even all you need is Kyler Murray to calm down, and he
Who
can
knows
be
if he
very
will.
good. I mean, even you send Baker Mayfield. Okay, he's not as talented as Kyler Murray, and it's weird saying this, but I think Baker is more of an adult than Kyler Murray is,
I agree with that.
and it's weird saying that. But
No,
I think
I
it's
agree.
true.
I agree with it.
Also, that's another quarterback. Baker Mayfield has to get home at some point.
We gotta hit that with the Watson stuff.
Oh, we will.
Let's real quick. So that division, I think the only real Super Bowl contender is the Rams. I think.
In that division, yeah, it's got to be the Rams. And 49ers I still consider to be a wild card, not
Okay,
just
so I'll write them down.
not just in terms of actual playoff seeding, but you never know how they turn out. So I think they have
Okay.
to be in the conversation.
I'm writing San Fran and Arizona for playoff contenders, but I'm keeping the Rams as the only Super Bowl
All right,
Super
all
Bowl
right,
threat.
I'll give you that.
All
Okay.
right, so let's keep going in the North. All right, let's go by division. Sorry, you win.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
So we
so
got the
Green Bay,
division.
we hit them.
The Bears
right?
are a disaster.
The Bears, no. The Lions, no.
No.
Minnesota,
Vikings,
possibly.
I'd put them in the same Arizona tier.
I wouldn't even put them that high, but I still think that they're a possibility because of the lack of the talent everywhere else.
Well,
in
also
the
now
NFC.
Zimmer's gone.
Right. Zimmer's gone. They have a Rams guy now.
Yeah.
They're going to run that offense, that McVay offense. But they doubled down on Kirk Cousins. They've got him for 2 more years.
Yep.
They've committed to him. I mean, they still have weapons at the wide receiver position. We'll see what they do in the draft
Right.
to address the offensive line. They've added some guys. I mean, they signed Patrick Peterson back. They signed the defensive end from the
They're-
Packers, Zadarius Smith.
They're a team you have to take seriously.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him a really big deal, Zadarius Smith.
They
So,
did.
I mean,
I
that's
remember. It's caught
that's a
my eye.
massive contract. So the Vikings are in it right now.
They're a team to take seriously.
Yeah. All right,
The-
so I'll put them down.
The NFC East is a dumpster fire as
Yes.
usual. I mean, I would say the best team is the Cowboys, but it's not.
I wouldn't. I actually think there's a lot of value.
It's them and the Eagles, but
No.
in terms of the division, what are you going to tell me? The Giants, the football.
No.
I'm sorry, the Commanders.
I'm going to tell you right now that I'm getting ready to put some money on Washington to win the division. I'm getting ready to do it.
I mean, on one hand,
It's just too good value. It's just too good value.
why? Because the entire division stinks.
Yes, because the entire division stinks. Well, listen, think about this. Dallas lost Amari Cooper. They lost at least 3 starters on offense. They lost Connor Williams. They lost Amari Cooper. And they lost their tackle, Lyle Collins, who signed with the Bengals.
Well, maybe they can get rid of some of their penalties with them.
And yeah, maybe. But they did all this so they could hang on to Zeke Elliott and Michael Gallup. Okay. Congratulations, guys. I mean, really. And so, defensively, they retained Dan Quinn. That's great. But we know year to year that stuff kind of balances itself out.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year on defense. On offense, who knows? They still have Mike McCarthy
Yeah,
and
that's-
Kellen Moore.
that's
So,
a problem.
it's going to be a problem. I don't think Dallas is really going to be that good. And then you look around the division, and it's like Philly really overperformed last year. They really weren't a very good team, and they stunk in the playoffs. And everybody knows Jalen Hurts.
To be fair, we all knew it didn't. It wasn't just you were against Tampa Bay. We knew they didn't deserve to get in. Nobody from the NFC East ever deserves to get in.
Exactly. They did not deserve it. They only beat the bad teams, and Jalen Hurts proved that he was not really worthy of being a starter on a playoff team.
It's it's
So-
funny that they came from the same college. He reminds me of Tua. They're
Yeah.
basically the same.
No, they're very
football player.
limited. Well, except Jalen can run. But
Jalen can run, and I think Jalen is a better thrower than Tua.
I think I agree with that. But I think, the Giants just are so devoid of talent. They're going to be better than they were just because they have a better coach, but they're not going to be, win the division kind of good.
No, but
I think Washington.
I mean, you have to realize the Giants are improving to a team that knows when to go for a quarterback sneak. That's it.
Exactly.
That's where they're
Exactly.
coming from.
Exactly.
You have a lot of work to do.
And Washington, I just think they have a lot of talent there, and it's kind of been run off the tracks because of lack of health, mainly at the quarterback position, and lack of options at the quarterback position. Now, just answer me this, and I know that Carson Wentz is not any of our favorites, but is Carson Wentz better than Tyler Heineke?
No.
What? What do you mean no?
Huh?
What do you mean no?
No, I've seen multiple games where Tyler.
You're wrong.
No.
You're wrong. You've watched the wrong games.
To quote Tony, the entire Colts game plan to have the Colts win games last season is to not let Carson Wentz do anything.
Yes.
This is a Tony. I'm paraphrasing.
I know. I agree with you. I'm
So
agreeing.
then they trade. Not only did they actually sign him, they traded for this guy. This is the same guy who lost to Jacksonville to end the season. How can you tell me that is better than Heineke? Where
He's better than Heineke.
Heineke went
better.
toe to toe with Tom Brady and the Super Bowl champions in a playoff game, and actually
I don't
beat him
care
again.
anymore. He lost to the Falcons. All right. He loses games. He's
You're-
a loser. I'm
Your-
sorry.
Your guy lost to Jacksonville.
He's not my guy. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. I'm just telling you, Carson Wentz is at least the 25th best quarterback in the NFL. Okay, Taylor Heineke's like the 35th best quarterback. That's all I'm saying. All
So
right?
let me make sure I understand this now. We get 32 teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, okay. So out of the 32, you traded for a guy who, by your own definition, is in the bottom quarter of quarterbacks.
Agreed.
So you agree he's in the bottom quarter of quarterbacks.
I don't think it was a smart move. I'm not defending the move at
you're,
all.
But you're telling me that this move, now that they traded for a quarterback who's in the bottom quarter of the league, this is going to elevate them to the playoffs.
Just telling you that the NFC East is extraordinarily weak and that Washington has the best surrounding cast around their team, other than the quarterback, in that division.
See, here's my problem. Now, you can tell me
You
that
put Dak Prescott on the football team, on the Commanders?
instant playoff team.
Playoff team, right?
Instantly. Here's the problem.
You put Carson Wentz on the Cowboys, instant tank job. Instant tank.
I agree
right?
completely.
But you take the Commanders roster and you take the Cowboys roster and you put, let's say, used to use Andy Dalton in this case, but you can't anymore. I don't know. Let's say
You're stuck.
I don't know. I'm stuck.
Ryan
Give me
Fitzpatrick?
no, you can't do that one anymore either. No, you can't.
Can't do that. Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins. Let's say Kirk Cousins goes back to Washington, or Kirk Cousins goes down to Dallas. Now, which team are you picking?
Yeah, I'm picking the Commanders.
You're picking the Commanders. That's exactly right.
But-
Now, all I'm saying is, and I'm not saying Wentz is close to the level of Dak. I'm just saying that Wentz, if you put him in a scenario where all he has to do is just not screw it up, he's really not going to help you become a Super Bowl contender like the Colts wanted to become. But he may be able to help you win in a terrible division like the NFC.
It's funny. It's funny that you bring that up. They're not as good as the Colts. So would you admit that the Colts have the better offensive line than the Commanders? Not saying the Commanders'
Yes,
offensive line is bad.
I would.
So you'd say it's a better offensive line.
Yep.
Would you say they have better receivers?
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't? Would you?
I like Terry McLaurin. I like him a lot better than I like.
You like one.
I mean, there's one receiver on the Colts that I like. It's Michael Pittman, and that's it.
Okay, you like Michael Pittman. You don't like T.Y. Hilton when he's active?
I mean, he's 37,000 years old. So
First of
not
all,
really.
no, he is not. Second of
He's
all,
old. He's not the same guy.
he's not what he once was. But you're telling me you would take McLaurin.
I would take McLaurin plus.
over T.Y. Hilton.
Well, think about-
over Michael Pittman.
Yes.
Over the tight ends. Over everything they've got.
Yes, I would. Yes.
You're wrong.
You're wrong.
No, you're wrong.
They
No,
also
excuse me,
signed-
I'm not
who did
done.
they sign from
me,
Carolina?
Excuse me, I'm talking.
What do you mean? You asked me a question.
I didn't ask. Who are you talking about from Carolina?
Carolina. Who'd they sign from Carolina? There's a guy they signed. He's like a gadget guy. I forget his name. He got hurt last year. Whatever. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know neither do
They
you.
signed him to a good deal. All right.
You don't even know who it
He's
is.
a
you're
good
bringing
player.
up.
He's a good player. They got McLaurin, and they have others in Washington that I'm not remembering right now. I don't have my computer.
They're not significant enough for you to remember.
Well, the Colts I know were not very good,
So, okay.
particularly in that area.
They were not very good, but they have an outstanding line. They have, at the very least, comparable receivers because you say one team's better, but you can't even name the receivers on the team.
Yes.
So you at the very least you have
right.
to say they're comparable.
Fine.
Okay. Do the Colts have a good set of running backs?
Sure. Absolutely. They do.
Absolutely, they got a good set of
They're
running
probably
backs.
best in the league. Best in the league.
You are in a division with Urban Meyer's Jaguars, with David Culley's Texans, and you couldn't make the playoffs.
That's right.
And now he's going from that division, which arguably might be one of the worst divisions I've ever seen in terms of what you have to compete against. 2 of the 3 teams you're competing against might be the worst teams I've ever seen. The other team, pretty much the entire team, is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry
No,
is out.
that's wrong.
Excuse me, I'm talking.
That is wrong.
Like, let me talk. Let me talk.
Not when you're wrong.
Well, I can't be, you have to let me finish. Then you can
Go ahead.
Okay. The entire team is Derrick Henry. Now, they did a lot to build around that, did a lot to compensate around that. But how many players, even taking him out of this, how many players did the Titans have to go through this year? I think they
They went through a million players, and they were a
That's
great
the
team.
point.
They were like 14-2.
The point is, they broke the record for the amount of players you had to go through. So this isn't just on the Colts. This is on every team that faced the Titans. They were beyond vulnerable.
It's on the Titans because they
They were beyond vulnerable.
overcame
Look, no,
the circumstance. They were a well-coached team.
Well-coached,
Listen,
excuse
you can
me,
say
a
the
well-coached-
AFC South-
a well-coached team that lost to the Patriots and Texans and a bunch of other garbage teams because they were completely depleted. But somehow, some way, the depleted Titans, David Culley's Texans, and the Jaguars were enough to keep Carson Wentz out of the playoffs. That's all I'm saying.
All I'm telling you is that the Titans were the number 1 seed in a very, very tough conference, and that the two teams,
Tough
yes,
conference. We admitted it was a dumpster fire 2 months
the
ago.
AFC. I
Yes.
disagree. They're a great conference.
Oh, you say that now. That's not what you said 2 months ago.
I disagree. I don't think
2
I
months
ever.
ago, you said it was a dumpster fire.
I never said that ever. I never
did.
said it. I never. I'd go find the video.
I will.
I'll be
I
here
will.
when you get back. The Titans were the number 1 seed, and the Texans and the Jaguars were horrible. I agree that 2 out of the 4 teams in the division were horrible. My problem is you're going from a division where 2 out of the 4 teams were horrible to a division where 3 out of the other 3 teams are horrible.
But
I'm telling you,
were
I
they
don't
as
think
bad?
they're as bad. I think the Giants are as bad, and I think Philly is probably half as bad, and Dallas is okay. But
I would give Philly at least Philly still made the playoffs.
believe
They're
we're arguing
at least
about
in the
this.
okay territory.
what were we doing?
You started it.
What were we talking about?
Where were we talking? I think we're talking about teams that were actually legitimate
Teams that are
contenders.
possible contenders in the
So,
NFC.
okay, you want
All right,
to-
so
let's-
we have to take one team from the NFC
I agree.
East.
One NFC East team.
Okay, put it.
Okay.
All
And
right,
then
now let's go to the South.
Tampa.
Tampa.
That's it.
It can't be Atlanta. No way. It can't be Carolina.
No. And the
New
Saints
Orleans
don't-
may be okay.
I mean,
I think
have
you got to
realize
start
that-
looking at New Orleans.
I mean, we
It's
can
a
get into the
possibility.
trade next week, but that entire trade that Philly just made with New Orleans is banking on New Orleans being garbage next year.
Well, it's also saying that this year's draft stinks.
That's exactly what it is.
So
We're saying this year's draft isn't very good, and
New
we're
Orleans
counting,
just got a couple more picks in this year's
we're,
stinky draft.
and we're counting on you guys being bad.
Yeah.
So next year this pans out. And New Orleans saying, yeah, we'll probably be bad. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's a weird trade for New Orleans. I really don't even know how to break it down, but I just counted. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that are possible contenders, and that includes the NFC East winner, Minnesota, and New Orleans. 3 teams who we're probably not very sure of in the NFC. That's 8 teams vying for 7 spots. That's not really that crazy of level of competition.
No, I'm looking at really it's the Rams and it's the Buccaneers.
Mm-hmm.
You have other teams that exist. Maybe they give a team a hard time. You know,
Yep.
there are certain bad matchups. We know the 49ers tend to be a very bad matchup for the Rams, and even though we didn't put them on that list, you do have teams like the Saints
Yeah.
who are a bad matchup for the Bucks. So it does happen.
Yep.
But I don't see a crazy amount of competition.
I agree.
You
So
know.
this closes our Brady loop,
No,
which
it
is
does.
just that the Bucks and the Rams are really the teams to watch out for, and possibly Green Bay. We'll see what they do. But you know, this Brady thing and this Arians thing, I don't think the Arians factor is really a big one. So I mean, we'll see what happens. I think Bowles. I mean, any other thoughts on Bowles? I think he deserves the chance, right?
He gets the job done. You know, I think. Why did he get the job with the Jets a number of years ago? He got it really for one reason. You're not Rex Ryan. That's why he got hired. I'm sorry, but that's what it was. Rex Ryan was a clown. Todd Bowles was brought in to be an adult and be the guy to, okay, guys, let's be professional. Let's get the job done. Let's focus. Let's do what we need to do. And that guy nearly made it to the playoffs once or twice. You know, I'm not going to say he was the best coach ever, but he was enough to just settle down, do what you need to do, and that's all Brady wants. Not a guy who's going to yell in anybody's face, but do your job. It kind of reminds me of Tony Dungy, where Tony Dungy wasn't the greatest coach. There was no reason for him to be in the Hall of Fame. He won a Super Bowl ring with Peyton Manning because he kept an eye on the defense, sat in the corner, and let Peyton Manning do everything. That's going to be what Todd Bowles does. So I think in that sense, it works out well. And a lot of the move to the Buccaneers, I mean, half the coaching staff was Peyton Manning's coaching staff with the Colts. So this reminds me of that esque move that Peyton Manning endured.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a good move. You know, I think Brady is probably was never really planning on retiring. Is really my takeaway from all this crap.
No, he was just retiring from Arians.
Right. He's retired from Arians, and Arians, we'll see you on the golf course. All right.
Yep. Go spend time with your family.
Yep.
As Brady refused to spend any time with his.
Exactly. So I say there's two more items of discussion. The first one is Von Miller. The other one is Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson, that's got to
And
be
the
the
Browns.
last one.
All right,
That's
so
gotta
let's
be
hit
the
Von Miller real quick, and then we'll close with Watson and the Browns and Baker.
Yep.
Vaughn signs a 6-year deal worth $120 million, 51 guaranteed, with the Buffalo Bills.
If the Buffalo Bills cut the guarantees down by maybe a third, maybe half, I love the deal. Because I know what you're going to do. If I'm the Buffalo Bills, sure, I'll give you that deal all you want. I'm going to backload the deal. There's no way I keep you for 6 years. I keep you for maybe 3, and
Yeah.
then you're gone.
It's not really a 6-year deal. When you look at it through, it's probably, I mean, I think that's like a $20 million a year average, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like a 2.5-year deal with the guarantees, 51. So, you know, that's probably exactly what it is. And this looks like a crazy deal for Von Miller, who's 33 years
Yeah,
old.
I was about to say, I understand the need for a pass rusher because you were ahead with 13 seconds in a playoff game and you failed.
Yeah.
And everyone knew all you're going to do is throw to Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. The
Yep.
Bills knew that, and they still couldn't stop it. And I think that's the most demoralizing part for a team. When you know what's coming, you know how to game plan against it, and you actually make the correct defensive call, and you still lost. So
It's pretty surprising that Von Miller at 33 got this deal. I mean, he was great with the Rams, but you got to remember the circumstance. I mean,
was a
Aaron
limited role.
Donald. Yeah, it was a limited role, and Aaron Donald is the main pass rusher on that team.
Exactly.
Which is insane to think about. So I don't really get it for Buffalo. I don't think the deal's as crazy as it looks on its face. But for Buffalo's sake, Von Miller being the number one pass rusher makes me a little bit nervous.
yeah.
So
It's a strange scenario because it's one of those, as a Patriots fan, okay, you're going to be dangerous for a year or two. But also, it wouldn't shock me if Von Miller gets injured again.
Yeah.
And I don't like saying that, but he has a bit of an injury history, especially in the past couple of years. And the other piece of it, when you're a rotational guy like he was with the Rams, you know, number one, a guy like Aaron Donald takes a lot of responsibility off of you and makes your job easier, but also you're not in all the time. You're only in for a few plays a game, and you're allowed to stay fresher, and therefore you're more explosive and you do more damage. I think that's why he got to showcase how good he was. If he tries to be the Von Miller of old back in Denver, he's simply not that anymore. He's good, but if that's what the Buffalo Bills try to use him for, I think he'll get exposed quickly. You put him up, even in the division, put him up against a Mekhi Becton. I don't think he wins against Mekhi Becton. Put him against Trent Brown. I don't think he wins against Trent Brown anymore. At least not if you have to do it, 20, 30 times a game. I don't think Von Miller can do it.
yeah.
So if Buffalo is able to get a great pass rusher in the draft, okay, I think this could be a very intelligent move, especially if next year or the year after you're able to get Von Miller to restructure his deal, which he does have a history of doing. He was notoriously hard-nosed with John Elway, but that's also Elway being Elway. With a normal, rational human being on the other side of the table, Von Miller's shown he's willing to be reasonable. So it could be a very fruitful. Of all the free agent contracts, most of them I have some criticism. This one actually could be a very good deal if Buffalo manages it well. And Von Miller, hey, he's going to get paid. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, 2 different teams.
Yep.
There's not a lot of players of any position who can say that. So he's going to command some money. And in both Super Bowls, he can go, yeah, I'm a 2-time champion, and I was a big reason as to why it happened. Von Miller doesn't get those sacks in Brady in the divisional round, doesn't bully Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl a little bit. They don't win.
Agreed. Absolutely. So he's a key player. I mean, he's showed up in big moments, so I get why they got him, but the money and the length doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But I think Buffalo's still going to be very good in a really stacked conference.
I hope they see Kansas City in the playoffs again. Hopefully in the wild card.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I mean, that'll be a really fun game if it does happen. So
here's the thing. And certain times when a team keeps losing to the same philosophy, the same team, or the same player, you eventually have to learn from that. We mentioned earlier in the Chiefs, you lost to the Tom Brady dink and dunk offense. This has cost you 2 rings. You could have 3, you only got 1. And they're starting to, okay, let's game plan around this. Or let's take the Peyton Manning's Colts back from the early 2000s. You lost to Tom Brady in the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. And then a year after that, you get embarrassed by Ben Roethlisberger in the playoffs when you were the number 1 seed, 14-2, the whole 9 yards. Your entire offense was air it every single play. You had to make some adjustments and learn from that. Or with Tom Brady, recently in the early 2010s, you lost to Peyton Manning in the AFC Championship game. They said, okay, we lost to that. We lost to this record-breaking air-it-out offense. Okay, let's go sign Darrelle Revis. Let's go sign Brandon Browner. We got to build our team to counter the thing that knocked us out. I think that's what you're seeing some of these teams do here. I think Buffalo is realizing we just got knocked out by Kansas City twice. We beat Kansas City on either of those occasions. We probably walk away with a ring, or at least have a very good chance at doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the Tampa Bay-Kansas City game, Kansas City was embarrassed in that Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. We saw Buffalo play Tampa Bay this year. That game went into overtime. They would have put up a much better fight. They may have even beaten Brady in that team. And then this year, okay, you escape the Chiefs. The Chiefs escaped you, excuse me. And then they get embarrassed by the Bengals. I think Buffalo would have beaten the Bengals.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
so-
Especially that game is in Buffalo.
Exactly. So I think that this is them game planning specifically to take on Kansas City. Take the pass rusher that's tormented Patrick Mahomes for the past 5 years. Not a bad move.
Not a bad move. I agree. So speaking of the AFC,
Oh, boy.
we've got a lot going on here.
The big fish.
Deshaun Watson has been traded. I just want to say, the biggest piece of this to me is the $230 million that was fully guaranteed in this contract.
I think a big piece to look at this is, a lot of times when you're the little brother and you're routinely getting embarrassed by your big brother, you try to take some of your big brother's tricks. So Cleveland looked at their big brother in the Pittsburgh Steelers and saw a quarterback with very questionable character, and they said, we need to take a page out of that book. So we need our own quarterback of very questionable character. And like our big brother in Pittsburgh, we're going to ridiculously overpay him a contract that's completely, I'm not going to say undeserved for his talent, but undeserved for his character that is representing your organization.
Yeah.
And, take the worst attribute of your older brother and bring that in and try to use that against him. That's what this is. And guys, I get it. Deshaun Watson is extraordinarily talented. He is. But not only and he's been cleared on a criminal level. Okay. You still have.
For now.
For now, yeah, that's great. You still have 22 plus lawsuits against you.
Yeah.
And then also, did you hear his press conference?
It was bad.
That was horrible. Any lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know anything about how that works, but any lawyer, and I could tell you this, if you are under litigation, I don't care how credible or non-credible the litigation is. When you're under this, don't say anything about it. Just, hey, it's an unfortunate situation. We'll see what happens, and we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Don't get into it. Deshaun, what are you doing? What are you doing? What he said made it look even worse. And not me personally, but there are a number of people, especially Cleveland Browns fans, who are looking at this like, okay, we don't like that character. We don't like what that represents in our organization. But okay, let's see what he has to say. They heard what you had to say. That scared him even more.
Yeah.
It makes you look even more guilty.
It's really bad. Really bad.
So that's what and on top of that, it's looking like, number one, there's a decent chance he's suspended for at least part of the season.
Yeah, he will be.
He will be suspended for at least part of the season, potentially the entire season.
Yeah.
And then what does Cleveland do? They sit down and work with this contract. Okay, we'll work this out so that if you get suspended and they try to punish you for being a terrible character, we will reward you in such a way where you do not lose any compensation. You still get paid close to $250 million fully guaranteed.
Yeah. His base salary in 2022 is $1 million. So that means that any suspension, any of the losses comes out of that funds, that base
which is pennies.
only. Right, exactly. Compared to the bonus money that he's getting this year, it's nothing. So it's really a remarkable situation because, yeah, I mean, you take out the lawsuit and all that other stuff, Deshaun Watson, like think about this time last year, or maybe I guess like 14 months ago at this point, before we knew about any of the lawsuit and the allegations, Deshaun Watson requesting a trade, getting the first really fully guaranteed 5-year contract for a quarterback, $230 million. Not that shocking, right? If we didn't know about all the allegations and stuff.
Right.
But now you come in with the allegations, all this other stuff that's transpired over the last year and a half, and it's just, it couldn't have gone to a worse person. I mean, Aaron Rodgers didn't get this amount of guarantees, and he's done nothing wrong. I mean, I know we don't love Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, he's said some dumb things,
Yeah.
but he has never been accused of harming anybody, just annoying people.
Exactly.
Which is like, okay, you're annoying, but fine.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, and Russell Wilson's going to get a new contract this year, and I bet it'll probably, it'll probably be very similar to this Watson deal. So we'll stop talking about it soon. But the Watson thing, it's a real bummer because you don't really know how to analyze it as a fan of the game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you try to bring some reason to something that doesn't have a ton of reason. I mean, it's just not going to make a ton of sense. So
No, and
it's a horrible tragedy that this is the guy that it went to. I mean, the first fully guaranteed contract, this is the guy that it went to.
Well,
The optics are horrible.
Well, and here's the problem, right? So not only does it cause all sorts of the problems that we brought up as far as the optics and the PR,
Yeah.
but you have to realize the guy who had 22 plus lawsuits against him, the guy who's probably going to prison, the guy who's probably getting suspended for at least part of this year, maybe the full year. We gave that guy $250 million fully guaranteed. What about the next quarterback who maybe isn't even a top 3 talent, but is talented, is well liked, is maybe a top quarterback, maybe top quarter in the league, and maybe he's thrown for 3,000, 4,000 yards, had some decent seasons. He comes out there and says, "Hey, I didn't have a single allegation. I had a Pro Bowl or 2.
Yeah.
I had a playoff appearance or 2." I mean, I'm saying like that guy who's maybe Kirk Cousins,
How about Derek Carr? He's up for a new contract pretty soon.
I'm saying someone who's between the talent level of Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, somewhere between that and like Tony Romo. Someone with Tony Romo.
How about like Kyler Murray or something?
No, Tyler Murray whines too much. A quarterback who doesn't whine, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not one of those top 2 or 3 quarterbacks, but not like number 10.
Stafford?
Even like a Stafford minus 10 years. Go somewhere, because it's going to happen.
Uh-huh.
Somewhere who's that talented, that caring, that passionate, and that quality quarterback. How much money does he get to demand?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna keep going up and up and up, and it sounds like that the owners are kind of upset with the fact that the Browns gave him that deal because they really set a new precedent.
They did, and it's the Vikings. I talked about earlier in the show. They had to take a number of calls saying, "Vikings, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you overpaying Kirk Cousins like this?" And then Cleveland decided to one-up them on the stupid scale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well,
I look at this, and you can tell me how talented he is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great.
Yep.
But I'm not trading until the allegations are gone. I'm not trading for you.
This is an incredible story because it's like no other that we've ever really covered. And, Watson with the Browns is probably going to look pretty good on the field, and it's going to look really bad off the field.
Oh, it is.
And so, and that's why it's hard for their fans to rationalize. I know a lot of fans have, taken off and going elsewhere already. And you can't really blame them. It's hard to root for somebody that has those kind of allegations against him. But with the Browns, they've got probably Watson's going to be suspended. Let's assume like 8 games, right?
Yeah. That's twice as bad as knowing about deflated football. So yeah. I would agree with that.
I mean, can we expect any of this stuff to leak into the locker room? Is this going to be a problem ongoing? I mean, it really wasn't in Pittsburgh, but would it be now? It's a little bit of a different climate now.
Well,
like as far as socially.
I think here's the difference with Cleveland and with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
With Roethlisberger, he had 2 or 3 allegations, except he, number one, paid off a number of them.
Yeah.
And number two, he came out and said, yep, that was pretty dumb. Sorry, guys. And the NFL and the Steelers said, okay, you're an idiot. You're suspended for 4 games, 8 games, and then we'll never talk about this again.
That was also 10 years ago.
That was, but the point is, Roethlisberger either quickly paid off those he had trouble with,
Yeah.
or he admitted wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And also, for all of his wrongdoings, and there are plenty of them, I'm not going to get into it right now, he was not accused of the things Deshaun Watson's being accused of right now.
Yeah.
So they're different. Again, he was no saint. He still is no saint. But this is a different level. So I think Cleveland has they have a lot of explaining to do.
Yeah.
And this is the Haslam regime, so they're not going to do it. And the other piece of it, now again, you could say that he's not exactly Prince Charming, but what do you do if you're Baker Mayfield in this scenario?
What do you do and what can you do?
Exactly. There's nothing what's he supposed to do?
Yeah.
The team basically just said, oh, the guy who's got 800 allegations, the guy who's probably suspended, that guy, we'd rather have him representing our organization than you. We'd rather have him going out there being the face, leading our team
Yeah.
than you.
And I'm sure they've met by this point. I mean,
Well, I'm sure
those
they
guys,
have.
he's probably in and out of the building. I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, I mean, this is the kind of thing that a team, typically, one of the stable teams, they'll usually trade the guy that was the starter before the new starter gets there.
Yep.
So this is a situation that the Browns apparently couldn't avoid. I don't know how.
Well, just
But if
'cause
the Browns had traded them,
the Browns are idiots. They have a
the
history of
second
this.
that you trade for Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield's value goes down day by day by day by day by day. I mean, the best time to trade Baker Mayfield was before anyone knew that you were trying to move on from Baker Mayfield. And I think the reason that they traded for Watson was because everybody found out that they were trying to move on from Mayfield. And then the Browns realized that they had really no other upgrade option. Because you look at the draft, it's like, we'll get into it next week, but it's not like there's any glaring quarterback out there that's got a potential to be better than Mayfield.
The team that should have traded for Mayfield, ironically enough, is the Commanders.
Yeah, that's true.
the
If the
Commanders-
Commanders had waited and been patient, like the Colts were,
Yeah.
If
Mayfield should either go to the Commanders or he should go to the 49ers. Or the third team, I feel bad to send Mayfield here, but it's a team that could use him, is Seattle.
I think Seattle. I mean, the thing is, Carolina and Seattle, it sounds like they don't want him.
Yeah.
And
Actually,
those are really the only two teams.
Carolina, apparently the feelings are mutual because Mayfield said, I don't want to go to Carolina. And Carolina said, it's all right. We don't want you either.
Really?
And
Oh, I
apparently
didn't know
went public. And Atlanta, who knows what Atlanta's doing? Yes, you have Mariota, but what do you want, a cookie for that? That's not going to get you anywhere.
Well, they're not going to. I mean, what's the point?
They're drafting a guy.
Yeah, they're drafting a guy, or they're just rebuilding in general. But I don't see a ton of great options for Mayfield. That the only other one I'd think about is maybe New Orleans, maybe.
Didn't they just sign Winston again?
Yeah, they signed Winston, but I mean, you could bring Mayfield in to compete. Maybe it's possible. I kind of think Winston's better than Mayfield. I don't know.
I think Winston is a lot more talented than Mayfield is.
Yeah.
Because I think Mayfield, he runs to the right. I don't know what else Mayfield does.
I think if you put him in the right system, I think if you put both of them in the right system, then Winston does better.
Well, I think here's the piece of it, right? I said it jokingly, he runs to the right, but usually the thing Mayfield does pretty well is he's a little bit more of a jitterbug, and he's pretty good at the short to mid-range passing game. I think Winston can do that as well as hit the deep game.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen him hit the deep game 2 or 3 times in several different systems.
And I think Winston's not the runner that Mayfield is, but I think everything else he's really probably superior.
Well, and I think Winston could be the runner if he was given the invitation to do so.
Yeah.
I think when he's in Sean Payton's and Bruce Arians' system, it's throw deep and throw deep a lot. So I think that his talent is there. I actually really like Jameis Winston as a backup quarterback or as a quarterback who's on a team with a lot of talent that can kind of ease him into it. I think he's a great fit.
Yeah.
And I still think that Tom Brady will lose to Jameis Winston's Saints at least once this year.
I agree with that. It'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, there's really no other. Are there any wild cards for for Mayfield that you want to throw out there? Because I think Seattle's really probably one. Seattle's one that I bet picks up either Garoppolo or Mayfield at some point.
I can see Mayfield going there more likely than Garoppolo just because he's not getting traded in the division.
But if San Francisco got a really good offer, like what's the offer that Seattle would have to put on the table to get Garoppolo? I mean, come on, there's a number, right? There is an offer out there.
Oh yeah, it's at least a first-round pick.
You think it's a first-round pick?
At least.
I think I'd budge if Seattle gave me a second and a third.
No, if Seattle's willing to give that, I'd probably budge.
I think. Well, I mean, I don't know. You do the math. There's some kind of pick calculator that says that's worth the first. Probably. I don't know.
Whatever it is, there's ways to make it work. But a team that would make a lot of sense, but for the same reason, he'll never end up there. Pittsburgh. Who's their starting quarterback next year?
Mitchell Trubisky. Well, it makes a ton of sense, but the Browns would have to cut him.
But
the Browns aren't going to cut him because they don't save that $18 million that Mayfield's playing on this year is fully guaranteed no matter what.
Yeah.
So they have to trade him.
Exactly.
And even in a trade, they may have to still pay some of that $18 million.
Yeah.
So they can't really cut him. And if they do, they know he might go to Pittsburgh. So there's really no upside for them to cut him. But that would be nice.
Realistically, teams that need quarterbacks. Go back to the NFC East for a minute.
Yeah.
The Giants are sticking with Jones.
But the Giants could, I mean, if
they
the
could.
Giants gave up a 7th-round pick to get Mayfield on a $10 million deal, like, why not? They could bring him in to compete.
Yeah, exactly. Let him do it. He'd probably beat Jones for the starting job.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd give it to Mayfield.
Yeah.
Because I think Mayfield's talented. I think
And this new regime in New York has no reason to to hedge their flagpole onto Daniel Jones. They have no reason to do that.
No.
So I mean, they may as well go get a guy who can compete with Jones, and if they do it at a really good price, they'll look really smart. So that's a good team.
Or here's another thing to think about: where does Kevin Stefanski come from? What coaching tree?
Minnesota.
Comes from the Minnesota coaching tree.
Well, Zimmer.
Okay, it comes from the Zimmer coaching tree. Now the Zimmers have a lot of connection. I mean, does Minnesota need a backup quarterback? Not really. I don't see them going for it. But the Zimmer coaching tree has a lot of connections. There's also a lot of overlap between the Zimmer coaching tree and the McVay coaching tree. There's a lot of connections there, and you just put a lot of money into Matt Stafford. I don't think they have a backup quarterback. If you get Baker Mayfield as a backup quarterback, it doesn't get a whole lot better.
I think I agree with that. But does Mayfield want to? Does he agree to the trade? Does it really matter if he agrees?
Mayfield,
I guess
matter.
He
doesn't have a no trade clause.
Doesn't have a no trade clause. Well, are there any other? Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I mean, I don't think Philly. I mean, if Philly got really good value, maybe they bring him in to compete with Hurts. If they don't like someone in the draft, which they just traded away.
Here's the problem with Philadelphia. They just had this problem where you have a quarterback who's still trying to find his way, and then you bring in competition way too early and rattle his confidence. You'd have to think they learned from their lesson. You'd have to think. Now, it's Howie Roseman, so he probably will learn nothing.
Yeah.
But
QB Factory.
That's
That's what they love. That's
do.
what they do.
Or,
I don't know.
Jacksonville's not getting a quarterback. Who's Texans quarterback?
Houston would have taken him back in the trade if they wanted him.
Yeah.
They didn't want him. It's Davis Mills.
Sticking with Davis Mills over Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and they're not. I mean, Tennessee. I guess you could argue they may take a shot. Maybe if it's a really cheap.
No,
They
I don't. I
pass it off
can't. I
as a
can't see
backup.
Baker Mayfield meshing with Mike Vrabel.
I think I agree with that.
It
No,
wouldn't work.
I mean, you go somewhere else. I mean, he's not going anywhere in the North. They're not trading him in the North. We talked about the West has a lot of quarterbacks. What about the NFC South? I mean, yeah, Carolina, we said no. New Orleans, we said maybe. And yeah, so we covered that.
Tampa doesn't make any sense.
I think we covered everybody except for Detroit, which is one possible outcome.
Why do you hate Mayfield?
Yeah,
Why do you hate him?
No, I mean, I think it would be really dumb for Detroit, honestly, because even if you get him on a cheaper deal than 18, it's only a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
And you have Goff, and Goff is on the level of Mayfield. Why do you need to get another guy that's just like that? We kind of know who
And
that
I think
is.
Mayfield is better than Goff, but even if he is,
I don't know. I think you could be argued either
I
way.
would say it's a legitimate conversation
Yeah.
either way. The problem is, let's say that I'm right, which is probably the case anyway. Mayfield, let's say Mayfield beats out Goff. Oh,
Yeah.
good, he looks great. Now you got to pay him a ridiculous deal, or you're
Yeah.
out of a quarterback.
Right. It's just a silly
So,
conundrum. To
Exactly,
Put
it's a
yourself in.
stupid situation
Yeah.
for the Lions, which makes it all the more likely that they'll do it. By the
It's
way,
possible. It's possible. Stupid lines.
So
What's
with,
new?
with Baker Mayfield, I feel bad for the guy. I mean, the part where it hits me is he actually writes a very heartfelt post, really reached out to the fans of Cleveland. He goes, hey, thank you for accepting me and my family. I really appreciate that. All right, I was nice, Browns management. I thanked them. I thanked you. I could be traded now, right?
Yeah.
And they said, oh, that's funny. We're not trading you. but you want him to be the quarterback, not me. That's right.
Yeah.
But then if I'm not your quarterback, you could trade me. No, we're not going to do that.
He eventually will get moved. It's just the
c-
Browns trying to. I mean, I would guess he'll get moved during the draft.
At some point. I mean, I can see. I'm just envisioning the Hard Knocks conversation a few years ago with Corey Colbert. Why am I running second team? It's going to be the same thing with Baker Mayfield.
What a great note.
And then next week, we get Kyle back.
Yep.
Before we close out, when is the draft?
It's April, the last weekend in April, whatever the last weekend in April is.
Last week in April. So it's about 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, so let's hit next week. I mean, we should probably hit the quarterbacks, but there's not a lot of great quarterbacks. So
They all
maybe we hit some
stink.
receivers too. Maybe we
Yeah.
do some tight ends or running backs.
Maybe,
I don't
there's 3 of us. Maybe one person has to do a little bit of analysis. Maybe one person does running
Little
backs,
homework
one
on
does
each.
quarterback. Do a little bit of homework on
Yeah.
all 3 areas, but maybe one guy's specifically supposed to be quarterbacks, one guy's specifically supposed to be
I like
running
that
backs.
idea. Yeah,
So we're doing offense.
let's do it.
So we got quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs.
Yep.
Okay.
Or maybe tight ends, offensive line, possibly.
What?
Why don't we put Kyle on the offensive line?
That's-
And then me and you will do all the fun stuff.
All right, that sounds good.
All right, cool.
All right,
You
he-
do pass catches, I'll do quarterbacks, or other way around,
I
whatever.
mean, we're going to do a little bit of everything, but
Yeah.
mainly my responsibility will be running backs and wide receivers. You get quarterbacks.
Okay, do tight ends too.
Oh, so I get everything.
Well, you want me to do tight ends? I'll do
Yeah.
the Taysom Hills.
You can do the running backs.
Want me to do quarterbacks and running
You do
backs?
quarterbacks, running backs. I'll take wide receivers, tight ends.
Okay, sounds good.
And then Kyle, when you're listening to this, you get the offensive line, and you can get fullbacks. Week after that, we'll take defense,
Yeah.
and then we will jump
Split it up,
into.
and then we'll do a mock draft, and we'll get it all ready to go.
I would say the mock draft. We'll have to talk about that. That show could get very interesting.
It will get very interesting. It
I'm
will.
excited.
I guarantee it'll get interesting. I
Oh, I'm
guarantee
excited
it.
for it.
That's one of my 3 guarantees of 2022.
What are the other 2?
Keep listening. You'll find out.
Thank you for listening to The Wise Guys. This has been another fun show. Have a good night.
Why am I running second team?
What you said?
Why am I running second team? So, if you don't want me to play, why won't y'all just trade me?